Hello, guys. Jerry Learns Business. I got this special guest here. His name is Jonathan Kroll. And besides being a jazz and classical pianist, which is something we'll definitely talk about, he's also written a book that he contacted me about. So his book is called What Does It Mean to Be a Gentleman? So first of all, Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you.
And Jonathan, tell me about the book, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is titled What Does It Mean to Be a Gentleman? And it's a book I wrote last year in the summer of 2019. And basically it covers sort of a couple of my years in life of really questioning what does it mean to be a gentleman? And basically the book centers around my thoughts and my experiences on this notion. And I think it's a great book. It shares a lot of my insights on what does it mean to be a gentleman. It talks a lot about the values, beliefs, ideas of what a man should be, or at least to aspire towards. And I think it's a great read for, honestly, anyone my age or college age, or just anyone sort of itching and curious about that question, what does it mean to be a gentleman? And it is actually available to read if for anyone. I'm actually selling it for free. If anyone wants it, they can send me a message, and I'm just excited to be able to share it with you.
The question I have then for you is, so you kind of currently are just kind of like on a contact basis. So whoever wants to read it, they can contact you, whether through LinkedIn or other social media, and then you can just give them a copy. Is that how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So likewise, sort of how we connected, anyone can honestly message me on any of my social media platforms and just say, hey, I've heard about your book. I'm curious about it. Would love a copy. And I'm more than happy to send a free digital copy to anyone that asks.
And I think that's a very cool, interesting marketing strategy. Tell me about how you kind of came up with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So really it kind of stemmed a lot from other, I guess, online social media entrepreneurs or influencers, whatever you want to call it these days. But I would say the main source actually came from a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's kind of a big online celebrity guy. I madly respect what he does, a huge hustler. But anyway, he said this notion that stuck with me for quite some time, and that was, you know, you should just get, what is your most valuable asset? Or he said something about that, and he basically said that, your story, your passion, like if you give that out in the audience, if you just share that,
Mm-hmm.
that's what is going to speak the most directly to anyone. And so I kind of took that notion and just said, okay, I'm gonna try that out. So that's what I wanted to do with my book, is just share my story, share a little bit about who I am, and hopefully that resonates with some people. And I didn't want money to be some sort of barrier between that.
I see. That's really interesting. You mentioned something that is worth talking about, which is people who kind of really inspire us, right? And I know other people also listen to Gary Vee. So tell me about when you started listening to Gary Vee.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great question. So for me, it really started when I was in college. So I'd say maybe 4 years ago, 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like things were really changing. I feel like then, obviously, with the election and such, the landscape and also the internet. I mean, there was a lot going on. I honestly just think I came across one of his ads or Instagram post or whatever, and I was immediately just struck by his confidence, his tenacity, and his willingness to just own what he said. I think that was something that I just didn't really see whole lot before.
Mm-hmm.
And what really continues to resonate with me now is just the fact that he pretty much owns up and lives up to just about every single word that he says, and he
Mm-hmm.
he pours himself on the internet to everyone. And I don't know, I'm inspired by that persistence, if anything.
I see. I see. And so when you decided to write this book, what was the process like? Was it like, okay, I'm just going to sit down at my computer or my iPad and write it? Or was it more like, okay, let's contact publishers, let's reach out to other authors, get advice? Tell me about that initial process.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great question. So for me, I've always wanted to write a book for a long time in my life. It was something I wanted to do ever since I was young. But honestly, like most people, I guess, going to college, it just eventually things got busy. I had to do college and all that. So I kind of put that to the side. But last summer, it really was just sort of like really an impromptu, spontaneous thing. I was and I can actually remember this. It was someday in June. I was just sitting on my bed with like nothing to do that day, and I just thought to myself, you know, you've been putting off this book idea for some time. Like, why are you not doing that? Like, why is that not just done? And I thought to myself, yeah, you know what? Like, I got nothing else to do, and you know, I'm just here. So I literally, in 2 days, I actually ended up writing my book. And, you know, the process of writing it for me was very spontaneous, like I said. Similar to my music, I don't really follow a set plan, or I'm not super like, oh, I have to outline everything. And it was really just, okay, I'm just going to go on my phone and just go on my notes or my Google document, whatever, and just start typing what I thought. And this 2 day sort of just, I don't know, you could say like spontaneous explosion of ideas and writing. This just sort of happened with me just sort of wondering, okay, let me just see what I can do. Let me see what I can write. And so, yeah, I did it in 2 days, and really happy about the way I sort of completed it. And in terms of publishing it, I actually did try and reach out to a lot of different publishing companies. You know, I would email them, I would Instagram DM them, I would do whatever. I would call them, and no one really was interested. No one was, you know, it was like, who are you, sort of a thing. And so I was sort of wrestling with that, like, oh shoot, I just wrote this book, but it just seems like I'm not getting that publishing aspect down. And then a couple of days later, it just hit me that, you know what, like, why are you waiting to share this? This is something that you believe in, that you feel is something that's important for you to tell. Just go and tell it. You know, why do I have to, you know? So I did that sort of self reflection, and then I was like, you know what, yeah. So I made an announcement on my YouTube channel, my Instagram, and I said, hey, I wrote this book. If anyone wants to read it, just send me a message. And that's sort of where it all began with that.
I think that's such a cool journey. It's like at first you're like, okay, let's try to find some publishing, and then you realize, oh wait, actually, self-publishing can work nowadays in this current world. I have this kind of like little book I wrote too, and I just kind of sat on it because one, it's like really personal, probably kind of like what your book is, but two, it's just like part of me is like, oh, maybe I should figure out how to like Amazon self-publish and stuff like that. But you know, it's pretty cool what you did, right? So you just kind of like, I'll just show people who want to see it, and it's actually really inspiring me. So it's a cool journey, and I'm glad you're kind of like sharing the story. Tell me about the people who initially reached out to you. Did you send it to them via PDF, or like what was the process like? Did you ask for feedback, or was it just like, okay, this is like one and done. Don't give me feedback. I'm not going to do a second version.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it was a lot of like trial and error, and it was a lot of, I think, just little fixes, little mistakes you could say along the way initially. And even to this day, like I'm not an expert on a whole lot of things, but what I do know about myself is that I just want to try. So after I finished my book, the first thing I really did was like, hey, it's in a PDF format, and I'm just going to basically just attach it to a bunch of emails and just Google search and, you know, look up a bunch of publishing companies. And I would just basically say, hey, here's a book, and, you know, I would love your thoughts on it. And initially I would get sort of like some sort of offer of like, oh, this is our services. You know, this costs this much and all of this stuff. And it just seemed to me like, I don't think this is the best way to get my book across. So I kind of changed my messaging a little bit to sort of say, you know, hey, I wrote this book, and I would love to share it with you personally, and I would love any feedback, and I would love to hear your thoughts. And I think that was a little bit better, because then it was a more, I guess, personal approach. And so I was starting to get replies back from like an actual person, not just like a spam reply thing, but an actual person that was saying, oh, you know, hey, you know, great, thanks for sharing and all that. But I didn't really find a whole lot of success. But, you know, hey, at the end of the day, I shared my book with those people. That's really all you can do, I guess. I mean, I'm not gonna complain about that. So it really was sort of a process of just figuring out more of like how I was gonna brand selling the book to people. And then, like I mentioned, at a certain point, I just realized, you know what? I'm on social media. I have an audience already. Why am I waiting? Let me just share it with my audience. So that's what I've been doing.
Where did you grow up, by the way, Jonathan?
I'm originally adopted from Vietnam, and I grew up most of my life in Vermont, so on the East Coast.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I've I don't think I've ever been to Vermont. I've never been to Vermont in Maine, but I grew up mostly on the East Coast too. What was your community like? Was it like lots of gentlemen type of guys? Like tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Yeah, I think growing up, at least in Vermont, it's a very urban place. There's a lot of nature, and I grew up in a small town, so I pretty much knew everyone that I interacted with, mostly in the town and whatnot. And
Hmm.
I would say that it wasn't like it wasn't super elegant. It was obviously like old school farmers, very casual. But I think something that I'm grateful for looking back at that experience in life is the fact that I think I really did feel like I had a good childhood growing up. I was in a safe place. I was around a community that cared and loved for me. And I think I just never want to take that for granted because I think that child development and all that, like that has a huge effect on just who you could become in life. But you know, I didn't really have a whole lot of like mentors or people that were like, oh, gentlemen, gentlemen, this. But you know, so I moved to Indiana in high school with my family, and that's when things kind of started to really shift my perspective a bit on a lot of things in life, but specifically about this aspect of being a gentleman. I ended up wearing kind of nice clothes, like dress shirts and more dress pants to school in high school, but unless someone had like a business interview or some presentation in school, everyone was just wearing joggers and their last night pajamas. So, I mean, it was really a different environment that I had to get used to. And unfortunately, when I went to college, it was kind of the same thing. I really wanted to find other people like me that were curious and kind of, you know, not only like to dress up more, but just had a appreciation for that and respect for that. And I don't really think I found that, which that's okay. You know, it just means that I wasn't in the right environment. But I think it did help me sort of become more of myself and really dig deep into like, okay, who exactly are you? You know, aside from your surroundings, like what kind of person do you really want to be? So that's what I sort of set out to discover.
And that's really interesting. Did you feel that your choice to become a jazz classical pianist kind of stem from some of your kind of life explorations too, or was that always just something you loved music?
So it's funny you ask that question because based my own experiences, I feel like it's like the reverse of that. So I almost feel like my upbringing with music influenced my interest in things that were more classical and elegant. And just to give you a little bit of context and background, I started playing the piano and taking lessons around age 9 or 10. And soon it became apparent that I did have a talent for music and piano playing. So I took lessons all throughout middle school, high school, and that was my major in college, piano performance. And I think when I started to go to college, that's when I think I started to like sort of add up that aspect of, oh, okay, like I do have that passion for performing and playing the piano. And it's pretty convenient and nice that generally when you perform, you kind of dress up because there's a certain amount of respect and just, you know, homage to that. And so it was kind of like, oh, okay, like this is neat. I'm wearing suits and ties and like this actually feels like this is a part of me. And so I wanted to really continue searching more about that aspect of like me. So definitely music has had an influence on this aspect of a gentleman.
And is your goal now to be a professional musician? What is next for Mr. Jonathan Kroll?
Ah, that is the ultimate question of the day. You know, having just graduated college, I am obviously in a phase in my life where I'm open to a lot of possibilities, and I do feel like, you know, when someone's this age, you sort of kind of have to have that mindset of okay, like take risks, but also like you know, be ready to work and just, you know, open yourself up. You know, for me, I do think that I could venture into things like, you know, musical performance and piano. The only issue with that, the only issue with that is that with this recent pandemic, a lot of the performing arts and symphonies have basically been shut down. And it's also another unfortunate thing that a lot of the audience that primarily goes to classical concerts and symphonies is more of the older age group, and it's unfortunate that, you know, this has to happen now. But at the same time, I do believe that a lot of things in life happen for a reason, and we may not always understand that reason, but the least that we can do is be open to what life might bring next. And so for me, I'm also interested in filmmaking, and I've been making YouTube vlogs, and I would really love to get into that industry and to connect with other people and to make films and to incorporate my passion of classical music with that too.
Yeah, and I think you have something good for viewers that watch Johnny What a Gentleman. He has a vlog. So I think he has something good down. You know, you have like a vlog, and then I would create another channel for your music, because the thing about, and you know, one of my biggest channel is even dealing with this right now. Like I have a channel on martial arts, right? But even the channel on martial arts, the algorithm's stupid. It's like it wants you to be a specific type of martial arts channel. You can't be like a martial arts channel that wants to do everything. So it's like with that lesson in mind, think about like your brands, right? So you got this one brand that's like more vloggy. Maybe that's what your Johnny What a Gentleman is. And then you could do another brand that's just your music. And I'm sure that's going to catch the algorithm, especially if, you know, you're a good pianist, you will catch the algorithm and you'll be recommended to people who like piano music and music. So I think you have a good thing going. Just that's the one piece of advice I can give to you. Just really think about branding and like hyper specific branding, because as much as machines are trying to be smart, they're dumb, because humans are dumb and we're designing things that are even dumber than us. So like the algorithm's not very smart, and it will get confused if you're a channel that does more than one thing. And even within that one thing, you have to keep being specific. It's so annoying. But yeah, but you have a good thing going, and I would, you know, encourage you, keep vlogging, and the other channel keep doing music, and it could take off, man. And like you said, it's an opportunity under this current craziness, as much as it feels like it's you know, it's a curse for everyone. But I think you got it, man. Especially you have a book. I mean, that's already ahead of most people, right?
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or anything else you want to promote while you have this platform?
Well, first off, all again, I appreciate this and doing this with you. Um, you know, for me, at the end of the day, I'm all about understanding and being able to discover other people's story in life. I'm not someone that likes to get super political, but unfortunately today it seems like politics is just seeping its way into every aspect of our lives. But I will, I guess, sort of end by saying this, and that is, I am a very much firm believer in the power of music. And I think that music is one of the only good remaining things in this world. Uh, as low as that may seem, I think that's just where we are. And I think that ultimately, if there is going to be any real change among each other, I think it's going to need to come from a place of openness and understanding, and not just rhetoric and wanting to be right. Because, you know, everyone thinks that they're right and the other person is wrong. But I think that actually, by showing through music that different elements of life can come together and actually are better when they are together, I think by showing that through music, I think hopefully people will realize that human beings are a lot more similar to one another than different. And I think that right now, I think we're looking at our differences and making that the issue. And I think if we truly want change, I think we have to really look hard at those differences. But I also think we also need to recognize that all of us are just trying to get through this life, and that the least that I can do is just to smile and to say that you were made, you know, in a beautiful image, and that's it. You know, like for me, I don't come from a place of judgment. I just want to help other people. So
I think that was beautifully said. And so, Jonathan, besides LinkedIn and besides YouTube, is there anywhere else they can contact you, or is YouTube or LinkedIn the best ways?
yeah, absolutely. So those are two great places. I'm actually also very active on Instagram. I actually manage 8 accounts that are kind of different brands of Johnny What a Gentleman. But my main account is obviously Johnny What a Gentleman.
I see.
And yeah, I'm on Instagram a lot. And, I also have a blog, Johnny What a Gentleman. And I also have a podcast, Johnny What a Gentleman. So, if anyone's curious, if you just Google search Johnny What a Gentleman, I'm sure you'll find places that I'm available to get in touch with.
That's awesome. So for viewers watching, I will definitely put some links so you guys can go follow Jonathan. And if you want to see his book, like he said, if you want to read his book, got ways to contact him. We gave you LinkedIn, we gave you his YouTube, we gave you his Instagram. In fact, his email is actually in his YouTube about section. So no excuse for viewers not to find a way to contact Jonathan if you want to see his book. Cool. So Jonathan, thank you so much. For viewers watching, go follow him.